Good day, everybody, wherever you are. It's the 25th of August, and the year is 2021. And if you turn to the news channels, one subject seems to be dominating. It is about Afghanistan. Afghanistan and what the sudden and abrupt decision of the incumbent US President Joe Biden to withdraw the US forces from Afghanistan has, uh, has unleashed so much turmoil, so much chaos, and everything is now. And what the Afghans are going through, the people of Afghanistan going through, the men, women, children, mothers, babies, infants, you name it. It's heart-rending and seems to go against humanity itself. How did this come about, and why did this all happen? Uh, just without trying to throw any aspersions on anybody who's behind this entire turmoil and suffering of people. Let's take a look at what Afghanistan is all about in the last millennium or so. Afghanistan is said to be a multi-ethnic country, multilingual, and the two main languages that are spoken. Uh, it is Dari, which is a kind of Farsi, the Iranian language, which is Parsi, but it's pronounced Farsi, spoken in Afghanistan, known as Dari. And then the majority speak that language, and the second largest minority is said to speak a language known as Pashto, and the community is known as Pashtun. Now, these are the two main communities, and there are several other communities, as we understand. And if you look up the information, somehow they say it's about 48 to 59 languages are spoken in Afghanistan. I have my misgivings about it. It could be that information, I don't know, subject to correction on my part. It could be very well erroneous because they probably mean 48 to 59 dialects and not languages per se. Again, I stand corrected, and if you know the exact information, feel free to comment. But that's not what matters right now. But we know it's a multi-ethnic country, and with so many factions, so many groups within the country. But it's been riddled by foreign invasions and foreign powers. Uh, Successive ruling powers trying to take on Afghanistan, starting with British in the 18th century, the colonial power, and which lost its. They British tried to annex uh, Afghanistan to ensure the rule, the Indian. See, British rule invaded 85 different countries, and they have ruled 85 different nations under the colonial era. And so so they wanted, somehow they thought they can annex Afghanistan. That didn't go well. They lost after the First World War. They fought. There had been so many wars fought with Afghanistan, and they lost in the end. They withdrew. So British lost, and it was it was ruled by Afghanistan about a millennium ago. It was, I believe, it's uh, back in the 11th century. It was ruled by a person by the name Mohammed bin Ghazni, who invaded India 17 times on 16 occasion. 16 the first 16 times he was defeated and driven out. He was persistent, and on the 17th time he was able to succeed, and he invaded India and went as far as the down south India and looted all the temples, took all the gold and whatnot. And invasion is largely about looting and robbing. Uh, there is no other reason to invade a country. So that's that, and it's even happening in the modern day in a different way. They don't call it invasion, but they call it by other names, nation building and whatnot. But those are euphemisms. But under the disguise of nation building, things do happen. The ulterior motive is different, but then they don't make it common knowledge. They choose to use different names for their ulterior motives for their own benefit, and the news media always it's always propaganda, and news media works for money, and money is coming from the reigning powers, and they will say anything that the reigning powers want them to. Now, that's propaganda media. That's why most people don't watch it. And at least we live in a digital era, although we are we are in a sense controlled by the media tech companies. You cannot say anything. Sometimes got to be careful about speaking the truth. Truth is very subjective. A truth that is favorable to the reigning powers are great, but if you speak the truth that is not, you will be you'll be you know what, you'll be banned. So so everything has the truth as a place and time, and the truth as what is conducive to the reigning powers. That's what will be permitted. So that's again the way the world operates. And so coming back to Afghanistan, in the 11th century, Muhammad bin Ghazni was a powerful ruler in Afghanistan. There was no Islam at the time. It was different factions, and in the 13th century, uh, uh, the great Genghis Khan, or Genghis Khan, as some say, Genghis Khan, invaded Afghanistan, and his progeny ruled for from 13th century to the to 18th, I believe 17th century. They ruled. They held sway, and their rule fell in the latter part of, I guess, in the 17th century. The Saudis, the Arab Emirates, took over. They infiltrated. They conquered Afghanistan, and with them, Islam was propagated, and Islam spread all over Afghanistan. Today, it's a very strong Islamic country, and following the Arab rule, the British colonial era came into the scene, and when British ruled India, they wanted to annex Afghanistan. Uh, they they tried hard. They tried to rule, uh, but the different groups within Afghan fought, and the British had to face so many wars with Afghanistan. Post the First World War, the Britain had waged so many wars with the Afghan Afghan nation, and subsequently they failed and they withdrew. Uh, at that time, the different factions in within Afghan, some of these factions were in good books with Soviet Russia. So Soviet Russia came in, and they saw their own. They tried to do under the name of reform and nation building. They failed, and guess what? When Soviet was ruled, Soviet Russia was ruling. American being their nemesis, they want to go do anything and everything to bring down the Soviet Union. So Ronald Reagan supported the Afghan factions, especially Bin Laden's group, invited them to White House and gave them everything they needed, uh, money, weapons, you name it. That was so these uh, these Afghan factions who were fighting Russians became the American heroes. America didn't get directly involved with Russia. America will never get involved directly with Russia, vice versa, and that will be the end of the world. Everybody knows that. But America and Russia, U.S. and Russia, have fought so many proxy wars, and America has always behind all the proxy wars, and they pump the money and supply the weapons, and the Afghan factions fought against the Russians. So these Afghan rebels, known as Mujahideens, was supported by Ronald Reagan, and even today, if you go check the Google, you still have Ronald Reagan, uh, is hosting and talking to them in the White House and calling them heroes. And it's strange that in fact, I think I saw a clip where there's an old Time magazine article, and I don't recall when, but back in the 1980s, I believe. And anyway, Ronald Reagan called them the real heroes fighting for their independence, and they comparable to the founding fathers of U.S. These mujahideens, the rebels fighting against the Soviet Russia. When they were fighting the Soviet Russia, they were considered. They were even compared to the founding fathers of United States. Suddenly, almost like 20 years later or 25 years later, they were declared international terrorists. They, what a leap from heroes comparable to founding fathers to become international terrorists that America was hunting down. That's the way it goes. That's the world we live in. What is true today may not be true. The perception of truth is so transient. What holds true today may not hold true in 25 years. What you think true is may not be true at all, and the truth never comes to light in the right time. It's always after the fact, many years after the fact. Sometimes 20 years, sometimes 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. Sometimes in the course of history, it's buried. Truth never makes it to the limelight. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the world we live in. But people are all gung ho about supporting different factions, different parties, different political powers, different nations. These are all labels, uh, whichever way you look at it. But people are willing to kill one another, and human life is sacrificed in the hundreds and millions, and it's almost inconceivable. So far we spoke about the Mujahideens who came to the who was supported by uh, by the American President Ronald Reagan, there in order to house the Russians from the Afghan soil, and along with the Mujahideens who enters into the scene, the infamous Osama bin Laden, who was supported by President Ronald Reagan. So Osama bin Laden can be called a religious fanatic. He wants to establish Afghanistan into a Islamic nation, strictly an Islamic nation ruled by Sharia law. You know what Sharia law means? It means women have no freedom, uh, everything goes by the religious book that was practiced 2000 in the deserts in 2500 2000 years ago. So whether it applies today in the modern day context, it's immaterial, but that's the name of the, and if you try to say anything questioning it, you will be considered it will be considered blasphemy, and you will face the consequences. The mankind has invited mankind apart from everything, uh, human civilization has come a very long way. We have invented all, so many forces in nature to work for us. You name it: light, heat, electricity, all these inventions, scientific inventions. We have invented the plane, we have invented all the technology, the digital media, the internet, you name it. But what we don't realize is humankind also invented two things that seems to rule the entire world, meaning two powers. One is money. The world is ruled by money. The other is the unknown aspect of human life, the the supernatural force that we don't know anything about, nobody knows, but we created God. God didn't create us. We create God, and we switch it around and say God created us. So convenient to create a God, and to even to top it up, some uh, some some crafty brain has devised in such a way, and he says the God created man in his own image. Now it's so convenient, the man can create a God because God created man in his image. So God himself has to be like man, some supernatural being with human fibers. God exhibits all human fibers: love, hate, anger, you name it. God gets angry. So that's God. So, but the God rules. People want that. You just go tell, you try to talk sense to people, you'll become, you're going to lose them. They'll get really, really offended with you, and they will go to any harsh, they will go to any extreme steps to hurt you. So that's about, so two forces that mankind invented: God and religion. Religion, in certain religious sects, it's more extreme. So Bin Laden was an extreme Islamic fanatic, and he wanted first he wanted Soviet Russians out, and received all the help from the Americans, and Americans are blasphemous too, by his own standards. So first get the help and then turn against them. That's what happened with Bin Laden. So the group that was the Mujahideens, who were considered to be freedom fighters, heroes, and comparable to the uh, the American founding fathers, suddenly became international terrorists. So, and in 2001, November 11, what happened? Bin Laden always went against U.S. interest, bombed two American embassies in Africa, and then he was, and no need to talk about the 9/11 attack. Everybody knows about it, and so that's how all this transpired. And Americans bombarded Afghanistan, and they occupied. Afghanistan for almost little over 21 years, 20 years, I believe. So why Afghanistan is said to be, it's their their revenue, their comes from opium drugs, and so other than that, it's not a rich country. Why is that Americans occupied? They call it nation building, and you know what nation building is. Uh, don't want to say anything blatant, but needless, you know the truth. Under the disguise of nation building, they stayed there for 20 years. Why? Uh, because in 2010, uh, the American military officials and geologists revealed that Afghanistan is one of the richest countries in the world because under it is sitting on mineral deposits worth nearly or little over 1 trillion US dollars. 1 trillion, over 1 trillion US dollars. That's not something they discovered in 2010, but long before. But it was uh, it was it was revealed to the general public in in the Google and internet, about in 2010. Supplies of minerals such as iron, copper, gold scattered across the provinces. There are also earth minerals, and perhaps the most important, what they could be one of the world's biggest reservoirs of lithium. And lithium, it's used an essential but scarce component in the rechargeable batteries and the digital technology, computers, and so on. So, Silicon Valley needs lithium, and so Afghanistan is a reservoir of wealth. So, and that said, China, and it is also not widely reported in the media. It is also said China has bought more real estate in Afghanistan than any other country, and U.S. wanted to have a stronghold in Afghanistan itself for the not for the reasons alleged, for other ulterior reasons. So that's Afghanistan for you. And now what has come about? Uh, the incumbent president, and as it's a reckless move to with abruptly withdraw the forces that has created this utter chaos, and and the Afghans are suffering, and the world is watching, and news media is talking every day. I don't know how all this is going to pan out, but this is I don't know the question. There are so many questions, uh, and I would call it questionable questions. I'll leave it this time without even raising the questions, because it is, as I said, you know, you can question, but you cannot. Sometimes you need to watch what you're saying. So I will not take the chance and say anything that I feel is right or wrong. That's uh, that's not my role. I'll leave it to you. Thank you for listening.